Hello everyone, welcome back. While people were enjoying a concert, a bomb weighing almost 40 pounds suddenly exploded. The happy atmosphere quickly turned into a nightmare, with smoke, fire, and cries for help filling the air. This tragedy left over 100 people injured and 2 people dead. But what no one expected was that this terrorist attack was just the beginning. So, what exactly happened that year? Why did the attacker cruelly harm innocent people? Let's go back to the 1996 Olympics to look at how this event unfolded. On July 19, 1996, boxing legend Muhammad Ali lit the Olympic torch at the main stadium of the Atlanta Olympics in Georgia, USA. This marked the start of the 26th Summer Olympics. Athletes from all over the world gathered to compete for prestigious gold medals. The Atlanta Olympic Committee even built a 22-acre park in the city center called the Olympic Memorial Park. This park was meant to be the heart of the Olympics, offering fun and entertainment for visitors with daily performances by famous singers and bands, making the Olympic atmosphere even more exciting. However, the Atlanta authorities underestimated the number of visitors during the Olympics. The crowds were so large that traffic jams frequently made athletes late to events. More importantly, the Olympic Committee didn't realize the security risks. Even though there were police officers from different departments guarding the park, there were no security checks at the entrances. This meant that criminals could easily bring in weapons and hide in the crowd to commit crimes. This lack of security made the safety measures seem strict, but they were actually useless. The Olympics had been going on for a week without any serious incidents, which made the organizers even more relaxed. Around 10 p.m. on July 26, 1996, Richard Jewell, a security guard during the Olympics, was using a bathroom next to the stage. This bathroom wasn't supposed to be used by security staff, but Richard had eaten a bad hamburger the day before and had a terrible stomachache, so he had no choice but to use it. Richard had always dreamed of becoming a police officer. He was once a deputy sheriff but lost his job for some reason. Still, he was a man with a strong sense of justice. After using the bathroom, he went to the area under the sound tower opposite the stage, where about 20 people were controlling the music. This was the area Richard was responsible for. His favorite band was performing that night, so he was in a good mood. Time passed, and it was already the next day when Richard noticed a group of drunk young men drinking next to the sound tower and throwing bottles at it, disturbing the people inside. He quickly went over and chased the group away. However, under the bench where the drunk men had been sitting, Richard noticed a Green Army backpack. At first, he didn't think much of it, assuming it was something the drunk men had left behind. But after his colleague asked the group, they returned and reported that the backpack didn't belong to them. The backpack seemed to have been deliberately hidden, which made Richard feel uneasy. He immediately suspected there was a bomb inside. Richard quickly organized his colleagues to evacuate the crowd and personally called his superiors and experts to the scene. Even though Richard hadn't opened the backpack yet, he was sure there was a bomb inside. His colleagues were puzzled, but because of his determination, they followed his instructions. Richard even ran up to the sound tower several times to ask the staff to leave the area. Soon after, the area around the backpack was cleared, but the concert continued, and the park was still packed with people. Not long after, the police and experts arrived and carefully opened the backpack. Inside, they found a pipe bomb weighing 40 pounds. The dangerous part was that no one knew when the bomb would explode. As Richard and his colleagues were trying to evacuate the crowd, the bomb went off, Hails from the bomb quickly injured 111 people, killing one woman on the spot, and a Turkish journalist died of a heart attack on the way to the scene. People panicked and ran away, while the park echoed with cries of pain. Ambulances rushed to the scene. Fortunately, when the explosion happened, Richard was standing behind a building and miraculously escaped unharmed. Soon after, the media caught on to Richard's story. Since he was the first to discover the backpack and began evacuating the crowd, the press hailed him as a hero. However, this serious terrorist attack didn't stop the Olympics from continuing. What's even more unbelievable is that after the event, the FBI, the Olympic Committee, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives argued over who should be responsible for investigating the explosion. In the end, the FBI was given the lead role. But this case was not like ordinary criminal cases. There was no clear motive, and much of the evidence might have been destroyed in the explosion, making the investigation extremely difficult. But you might have already thought about this. How could Richard, a security guard, know there was a bomb in the backpack? The police thought the same thing. They began investigating Richard Jewell. Richard Jewell was born on December 17, 1962, in Danville, Virginia. When he was 8 years old, his mother, Bobby Jewell, left his unfaithful father and quickly remarried to John Jewell. After graduating high school, Richard studied automotive repair at a technical school. However, just days after starting school, his stepfather left a note and disappeared, abandoning the family. Upon hearing the news, Richard decided to drop out to stay with his mother. From then on, he worked various jobs until 1991. After working as a prison guard for a year, he was promoted to deputy sheriff and sent to the Georgia Police Academy, where he graduated in the top 25 of his class, excelling in shooting skills. Richard seemed to have found his calling in life and worked extremely hard, sometimes even too hard. He was known as a workaholic, but he was also disciplined for exceeding his duties, leading to his demotion after a patrol car accident. Disliking the prison guard job, Richard resigned and took a security job at Piedmont College. However, he didn't learn from his past mistakes. Piedmont had a strict no-alcohol policy, and Richard became very unpopular with the students for his strict enforcement. He was so disliked that students filed complaints about him 3 to 4 times a week. Notably, he once chased a speeding car on the highway and tried to arrest the driver, competing with other police officers to make the arrest, even though this was clearly beyond his job's responsibilities. Not long after, he was fired from Piedmont and then took the security job at the Olympics, where he unexpectedly discovered the deadly bomb. At this point, you might wonder if Richard could be the one who planted the bomb. Could he have staged the event to get attention? The FBI certainly thought so. Richard, who was over 30 years old, overweight, and living with his mother, seemed to fit the profile of someone who might want to be seen as a hero. In fact, there was a similar case in the 1984 Olympics, where a police officer planted a bomb and then reported it, creating a similar situation. As for Richard, he was still basking in the glory of being a hero, unaware that the explosion would turn into a lifelong nightmare. On the night of July 29, 1996, 2 days after the explosion, a friend of Richard's named Tim, who was an investigator, visited his home. They had dinner and discussed the explosion late into the night. However, Richard didn't know that Tim was carrying a listening device and recording their entire conversation. The next day, 2 FBI agents met with Richard. They invited him to participate in a training film, and Richard agreed without hesitation. They took Richard to a small office at the FBI headquarters. where the investigators kept asking him questions, and Richard answered each one. There was also a camera recording the entire conversation. Even though they said it was for a film, the situation felt more like an interrogation. After about an hour, one of the investigators pulled out a document and said, "Let's start over. By the way, we want you to sign this form." Richard took the document and immediately realized it was a Miranda waiver, a form police usually ask suspects to sign during an investigation. The FBI had used a trick, but Richard, who had been a deputy sheriff, knew what was happening. This document made him realize something was wrong. Why was he suddenly a suspect? Richard refused to sign it and contacted a lawyer friend. Meanwhile, outside the police station, the story had become a huge media sensation. The FBI had leaked information that they were investigating Richard Jewell, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution was the first to report it with a shocking headline. FBI suspects Hero Guard might be the bomber. This was a huge shock, a story about a hero turning into a criminal attracted massive public attention. The media quickly dug into every part of Richard's past, listing any mistakes he had made in his life and even comparing him to serial killers. When Richard left the police station and went home, he was faced with a crowd of reporters surrounding his house. He was closely watched by high-resolution cameras 24/7, and inside his house, the police had secretly placed listening devices to keep him under constant surveillance. Not long after, the FBI came to Richard's house again, this time to search it. They took hundreds of items and collected his hair and fingerprints. Souvenirs like guns, grenade shells that Richard had bought as keepsakes, and debris from the explosion that Richard had picked up only made him look more suspicious. However, the FBI found something suspicious. The bomb threat call was made at 12:58 p.m. on the day of the explosion from a payphone near the park. The call warned that the bomb would explode in 30 minutes, but in reality, it exploded after just 22 minutes, clearly intended to kill the police who responded to the scene. The problem was that, according to calculations and witness statements, Richard didn't have enough time to run to the payphone and make the call. The FBI addressed this suspicion by suggesting that Richard might be gay and hostile to the police, and that the call could have been made by his lover. All of Richard's male friends were investigated one by one, and the media continued to attack Richard with labels like "Mama's Boy," "gay," and other accusations. Even though he hadn't been tried, they had nearly convicted him in the court of public opinion. Even when Richard's mother went outside, some people deliberately insulted her to make her angry, then took photos of her angry expression to further the story. But no matter what, the truth eventually came out. Despite being very suspicious, the police couldn't find any evidence to charge Richard. Richard bravely faced the situation, passed a lie detector test, and held a press conference during the Democratic National Convention, directly appealing to President Bill Clinton. This put the FBI in a difficult position. They invited Richard to the police station for questioning once again. The interrogation lasted 6 hours, and they took 27 pages of statements, but the investigators still couldn't find anything suspicious. Finally, after 88 days of being considered a suspect, the FBI announced that Richard was no longer under suspicion. Some investigators who had behaved improperly during the investigation were widely criticized. Richard later sued the media outlets that had defamed him, especially the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. However, Richard's life was never the same. Many people still believed he was guilty, even though there was no proof. The 88 days of pressure took a serious toll on Richard's mental health. It didn't just exhaust the FBI, it also destroyed Richard's peaceful life and let the real criminal stay free. The investigation had to start all over again, but it was too late to find new clues. Not long after, another explosion happened. On January 16, 1997, a bomb exploded at an abortion clinic in Sandy Springs, Atlanta. The clinic was badly damaged, but luckily no one was hurt. However, when the police arrived to investigate, a second bomb went off, seriously injuring several officers, leaving a total of 50 people hurt. It was clear that the criminal had set the first bomb to draw police to the scene, while the second bomb was the real plan. This cruel method made the investigators worried, not knowing when or where the next explosion might happen. Although the police wanted to link this explosion with the one at the Olympics, they found that the explosive devices used were different. So the two cases were investigated separately. Surprisingly, just 5 weeks later, another explosion happened in Atlanta. This time, it was at a bar for lesbians in the city center, injuring 5 people. When the police arrived at the scene, they found a backpack hidden in a corner, which caused them to panic. They quickly evacuated the area and used a bomb disposal robot to approach the backpack. Inside, they found another bomb. If they had been able to defuse it successfully, they might have found fingerprints or other clues on the bomb. Unfortunately, the bomb exploded, but luckily, no one was injured this time. After careful examination, the investigators noticed that while the explosive devices in the 3 cases were different, the metal components were similar, and the bombs were expertly made, not something an amateur could do. The criminal was clearly skilled at evading the investigation, making it extremely difficult to catch him. On January 29, 1998, another explosion occurred at an abortion clinic in Birmingham, Alabama. Unlike the previous times, this bomb was detonated remotely. The criminal hid in a spot where he could watch the bomb and waited until the police officers got close before setting it off. The explosion killed one officer instantly and seriously injured a nurse. This meant the criminal was near the scene at the time of the explosion. Soon after, a student provided an important clue. While watching the explosion from his dorm, the student noticed a suspicious man. Usually, when an explosion happens, most people look for a safe place to watch from. But this man didn't look back at the explosion. Instead, he quickly left the scene. Feeling something was wrong, the student secretly followed the man and recorded his license plate number. The police traced the license plate and found that it belonged to Eric Rudolph. Eric Rudolph was born on September 19, 1966, in Florida. He was a devout Christian and even joined religious movements that strongly opposed homosexuality and abortion. Eric had joined the U.S. Army and served in the 101st Airborne Division as a demolition expert. However, in 1989, he was discharged for using drugs. After that, Eric joined several extremist groups, and things began to make sense. When the police contacted Eric's family, they learned that he often appeared suddenly and had a clear anti-government stance. However, the FBI faced a challenge. As they were trying to secretly investigate Eric, the U.S. Attorney's Office made Eric's arrest warrant public. This could have made Eric more cautious and allowed him to escape. As expected, when the agents followed Eric's trail, they found that he had fled. On February 7, 1998, Eric's truck was found by a group of hunters in the Appalachian Mountains. Inside the truck, they found receipts from Burger King and a local supermarket, showing that Eric had bought hundreds of dollars worth of supplies, enough to survive in the wilderness for 5 to 6 months. A large police force was then deployed to search the forest and hunt for Eric. On March 5, 1998, the FBI added Eric to the list of the 10 most wanted and offered a $1 million reward for information leading to his capture. Surprisingly, many local people helped Eric escape, seeing him as a hero against the government. After years of searching, with countless experts and special forces involved, Eric still wasn't caught. Gradually, the police reduced their efforts to find him, and some people believed that Eric had died in the forest, with his body yet to be found. In the early morning of May 31st, 2003, behind a store in Murphy, North Carolina, a newly appointed officer named Jeff was on patrol when he spotted a man acting suspiciously near a trash bin. When the man saw Jeff, he ran away. Without hesitation, Jeff chased him down and eventually caught the man, bringing him back to the police station. Shockingly, the man was Eric Rudolph, who had been on the run for 5 years. Despite living a life on the run for years, Eric didn't look worn out or shabby as one might expect. Instead, he wore a camouflage jacket and new sneakers, not like someone living in the wilderness. This showed that he had received significant help from the locals. After being caught, Eric agreed to a plea deal. He confessed to all the charges and revealed the locations of the remaining bombs in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. The police later found 250 pounds of explosives that Eric had hidden in a forest in North Carolina. Since the bombs were too unstable, the police decided to destroy them on site to ensure safety. On April 13, 2005, Eric Rudolph made a statement saying that his crimes were motivated by political reasons. There was no doubt about his sentence. On August 22, 2005, Eric was sentenced to 4 life sentences without parole for his involvement in 4 bombings. During the sentencing, he only apologized to the victims of the Olympic Park bombing and once again expressed his dissatisfaction with the government. It wasn't until this time that Richard Jewell, the man who had first discovered the bomb, was finally recognized as a hero again. His career and personal life improved, and he became a police officer in Georgia. Many years as a police officer had sharpened his awareness of potential dangers. In fact, when he discovered the suspicious backpack that year, Richard couldn't be sure there was a bomb inside. But with the thought that it was better to be safe than sorry, he decided to report it and evacuate the crowd, ultimately helping to minimize the damage. Sadly, just 2 years later, when his wife returned home from work, she found that Richard had collapsed on the bedroom floor and passed away at the age of 44. The cause of death was heart disease. Eric Rudolph was later held in a maximum security prison in Colorado, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This prison houses extremely dangerous male inmates. Eric spent 23 hours a day in a solitary cell that was only 7.4 square meters in size. In 2021, Eric applied for clemency, but his request was denied. In prison, he regularly received money and books from others. In February 2013, Eric's book, Memoirs of an Extremist, was published on a terrorist organization's website. However, his fate was sealed. Eric will never leave prison, and the life of a government opponent like him will end under the strict watch of the very government he fought against. That's the whole story for today. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.